Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It is the NFL Divisional Playoff Weekend. It is probably the best damn weekend in the NFL because you've got 4 games still. We got 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and you get rid of all the also-rans, the weaker teams, if you will. We've got probably the best teams left standing still in the hunt for the Super Bowl this weekend, so we're excited about it. Ian Cameron, my usual guest, Philip Nelson, with us once again. And we did a Beatles version of the show, a little help from our friends here for this edition of the show. CFL quarterbacks, good friends, Davis Alexander, Trevor Harris joining us for this edition of the Football Frenzy as well. First of all, to Davis and Trevor, congratulations, new contracts for both of you. Davis, my goodness, I can only imagine for you, getting the contract with the Alouettes and your exactly. Round of applause. Let's bow down. Well-deserved from your body of work last year. Take us into just the difference this year's off-season for you, now that you're the man, you're the guy, you're the number one quarterback with the Montreal Alouettes compared to last year when you're in the backup role. I'm sure the off-season regimen, training, preparation, you name it, just ramps up through the freaking roof for you right now. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to still try and keep it pretty similar and pretty, close to the same as last year. But I would just say, I guess I'm a little bit more in the spotlight, some, random, reporters and all that stuff and reaching out and stuff. But yeah, we're going to still try and keep it the same and maybe sneak in a Hawaii trip for my girlfriend.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. You're going to have to do a lot more media. So a lot more Herb Zurkowski in your life, a lot more Joey Altieri and all those guys. You're going to be seeing them every day now, I'm sure, that you'll be doing the quarterback spot. But no, well-deserved, man. I can't wait to see what you and the Alouettes do this season. And Trevor, I told you, you've got a lot of football left in you, my friend. And back in the saddle with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, re-upping with them for another season. I know you're excited about that.
Yeah, and to Davis's point, nothing really changes when you become the man. It's just you're judged a little bit differently. Expectations are a little bit different for him. But I could have told you from the first year that he was in Montreal when I was with him, that the moment's not going to get too big for him. Maybe if we're playing pig on like mini hoop basketball, but like the football field, the moment never gets too big for him, and he treats everything the same. And you'll see him play the exact same way in a preseason game as he will in a regular season as a Grey Cup. And I think he's built for it. And so I'm excited for him. And for myself, like the motivation just keeps building. And as soon as that's gone, that's when it's time to hang up. But still very driven, excited, and I feel like my best football is in front of me. So I'm pretty excited about this year too.
It's awesome stuff. You still think you got things to achieve. You feel you can play at a high level. You still have the love, and you still have that. You want to prepare because it's work. It's work to prepare for a football season, and you still feel like I'm cool putting in that work, putting in that time, putting in that effort, to get ready. And it doesn't feel like you're dragging ass, right, to do the regular day-to-day things that you need to do during a football season. As long as you've got that feeling, you definitely should, keep at it. There's no doubt. We were talking before the show started. The CFL schedule, finally, it felt like it was never going to arrive. It finally got dropped this past week. I know there's a couple of dates that are marked on the schedule, I'm sure, already for our 2 CFL quarterback guests, 2 friends of mine here. We've got, I think, Saturday, August the 2nd stands out, as one. And I think when you look at it as well, down the road in September, Saturday, September 13th stands out as one. What are those games you're asking me? It's the Montreal-Saskatchewan games coming up this year. How are you guys going to treat that? Now, you guys had an epic last year when he went in there into Saskatchewan with that debatable, did he step out of bounds, did he stay in bounds play, which we've talked about ad nauseum. And depending on what side of the fence you're on and what fan you're a team of, you've had different kind of thoughts with that. But I know you guys are looking forward to locking horns probably a couple of times this year. Yeah, and hopefully it's a Grey Cup preview. That's obviously not bulletin board material for anybody else. I root for guys like Davis. As a good friend of mine, and I'm excited to see him get an opportunity. And just something him and I chatted about briefly, this offseason was hopefully we get to play in a Grey Cup against each other. It'd be a lot of fun. So that's what we're hoping. But at the same time, every game's treated the same. We've got to make sure that we're just ready to rock each every week. And Davis probably echo that exact thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's pretty cool to say that, you go up against some of the great quarterbacks like Trevor. And, he was able to mentor me. And, it was so cool just to go to Sask and, go head to head versus Trevor. We had a heck of a matchup, and, he played phenomenal that game. And I know I'm going to have to probably bring my A game every time I go up against Trev.
No, those will be great games. I gotta throw this in here. I gotta have a Ticat mention, as of course a Ticat fan, season ticket holder. I couldn't help but notice we always get screwed in one way or another on the schedule. There's always one spot where I'm like, they really did that to us. Really, these freaking schedule makers, really, they had to do that to us. We're playing Labor Day against Toronto, as we always do. Monday, September 1st, 2:30 Eastern, no issues. Then, of course, you turn around and you put us there, going to Davis's home there, Montreal, Saturday, September 6th. 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we play on Labor Day Monday, and then we got to play on a short week, Saturday, early game, too. They couldn't even give us a freaking night game. You give us an afternoon game at 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturday in Montreal. All I will say to you, Davis, is this. If you lose that game, my Ticats on Saturday with the gift scheduling spot of a fucking lifetime, you are going to hear from me. I'm going to give you so much shit for that, man. You better win that.
Yeah,
it's set up for you on a silver platter.
I think we had a tough one too. I think we go to BC, all the way to BC, and then I think we play at Winnipeg 5 days later, which is a pretty tough schedule.
Oh yeah, every team's going to have one, gripe about, wow, we're scheduled. What kind of turnaround is this that we got to play? But that's the one that stood out from a Ticat standpoint. That Monday Labor, and of course you are on the beneficiary of it, getting us on Saturday that weekend after we play Labor Day Monday, that physical, always intense game with the Argos. So, like I said, you better get the job done on Saturday, September the 6th. Phil, you were briefly in the CFL. I know that, right? You attended a camp or two, right? What were your CFL recollections there?
2016. Or I'm sorry, 2017, I signed midway through the season with the Blue Bombers, and then the next year went into training camp, and that was about it. So, from there though, I remember, I was trying to remember all the people that I was with, because Mike O'Shea was the head coach, Matt Nichols was the the quarterback.
Yeah, that was before even Zach got there. Yeah,
I was trying to remember who the quarterback's coach was, but Paul LaPolice was the OC. Is he still in the league?
That's our guy. Whoop whoop. That's the sound of LaPolice.
Yeah.
That's the sound of.
I liked him. It was awesome. So it was a good time up there. So I had fun. I froze my nuts off. That's for sure.
Come on, you're a what?
Well, Winnipeg. Oh my God,
be complaining.
Winnipeg's like Chicago on steroids. That's how I remember. I learned how to throw through the wind through that experience. So that really helped me, when I got back down here, and then had the stints with the XFL, the AAF, and all that. And now here I am. So
now here you are talking to a dope like me. So, hey,
yeah.
All right, let's get into it here, guys. We got some NFL divisional games to talk about. I can't wait. We'll begin with Houston and Kansas City. First game out of the chute on Saturday. We got KC 8.5-point favorites at Arrowhead, 41.5 the total. Certainly give the Houston Texans all the credit in the world for a dominant performance against the Chargers after a slow start. But you look back on that game and you ask yourself, look at all the points Houston scored, but a lot of them came off defensive touchdowns. Obviously, Justin Herbert didn't have a great game. He was very disappointed, with the Chargers offense. And even when they had the ball for seemingly the entire first half, they settled for Dicker the kicker field goals on multiple occasions, and they never got that separation. And then I think the play of the game, because the game was about to really go south for Houston early, even though they were just down 6-0 at the time. CJ Stroud somehow escaped pressure, throws on the run, and a marvelous first down completion all the way down to midfield when it looked like
third down too, right?
It was on third down, Trevor, exactly. And they would have had to punt from their end zone. Automatic field position it would have been for the Chargers. And the game just basically flipped from that point on. They got the Texans going. Their defense got some confidence from it. And again, they took over, and give them credit for that. But now you got to go on the road. You got to face a rested Kansas City Chiefs team. Kansas City dealt with a bunch of injuries, both sides of the ball. But from all indications and all the reports I've read, guys, this week, they're fully healthy for the first time in quite some time. Their defensive line, Chris Jones is fully healthy. He was banged up for a bit. Mahomes' ankle, no longer an issue. And you look at down the stretch of the regular season when they got Isaiah Pacheco back at running back. They got Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown finally in the mix. And what you also saw when you got those players in the mix on offense for this Chiefs team is their offense started to hum again. And it really started to play at the level we kind of expect from Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. So down the stretch, they played better. I have gone back and looked at the fact that in the playoffs, this Chiefs offense has consistently stepped up their game. And an amazing stat is they have not punted in the first drive of a playoff game since 2021. That's unbelievable. That's 4 years ago that they have put some kind of points on the board in the first offensive possession that they have had in a playoff game. So that's some pretty impressive stuff. I think a key matchup, and I know Phil and I on the wild card show last week, we talked key matchups. The edge rush of the Texans versus the tackle situation for Kansas City is going to have a huge role in this game. Because if one thing you're going to nitpick at with KC is that the tackle spot has been a little bit erratic at times in terms of, consistency down to down. And Houston, when you're talking about Will Anderson and the kind of pressure they can get from the edge rush spot, if they can get home, then they're in this game. But if they can't, it's going to be a long day because that offensive line for Houston, you could say, is a problem area. CJ Stroud was running for his life early. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, that pass rush was really getting home. And obviously, this is probably as healthy as Chris Jones for the Chiefs has been all year. And that pressure is probably going to be evident here for the Chiefs against CJ Stroud in this game. You look at the points per game numbers. You look at the yards per play numbers for Kansas City on offense. They all take a big jump in the playoffs compared to the regular season the last few years. And I think they get off to a good start here. 8.5 is a tricky number because we know the Chiefs long-term this year have not been covering as bigger favorites. I do think they win this football game. All the credit to Houston, but the Chargers played probably a horrible offensive game, and Herbert, by his standards, certainly did. I think it's going to be difficult here. I would probably look at Kansas City's team total in a first-half full game situation because I do think they can put up, the numbers really do stand out. This is a team that usually gets to the 14, 17, 20-point range in the first half of a lot of playoff games, Kansas City. So if that's the case, again, they're going over their team total in the first half. It's that simple, and I think there's a good chance they do that. I'd prefer looking at a Chiefs team totals, betting those over rather than laying the 8.5 here in this game. And I like over 41.5. I know the weather, it's outdoors. It's going to be cold. It's going to be cold in KC, Philly, and Buffalo. All these outdoor venues are going to be damn cold. But the wind's not going to be a big issue. Precipitation's not going to be terrible. And the total proved to be too low with Houston last week. I think 41.5, it might be just a little bit too low because, look, there were significant strides made by the Chiefs offense late in the year. You look at the playoff performances, which have been consistently better for the KC offense in the playoffs the last few years compared to the regular season. I think it's a full season number total, 41.5, where KC's offense was underwhelming. But with Brown in the mix, with Pacheco healthy, with Hopkins now, I think is going to maybe finally have more of an impact when they traded for him in the offseason. Hasn't been noticeable, hasn't been a huge component. I could see him being a bigger factor. So I think the total here just a little bit light. We'll go around the horn here. We'll start with you, Phil. What do you think here, Houston, Kansas City?
Yeah, you actually took what the key matchup I was looking at is that Houston D-line versus the KC O-line. Obviously Kansas City has had their fair share of struggles protecting Mahomes. So I think that's going to be a big indicator on what's going to happen with the points here. I mean, and it goes both ways. You said the Houston offensive line too struggled as well. So I think if the pass rush gets to these quarterbacks, I think we could see an under type game, especially with these weather conditions. I did see, I think it's broad range here, but it said 10 to 20 mile per hour winds and like 22 degrees. So could be a factor there, but I think what's going to be huge, to neutralize that is can both teams run the ball? Joe Mixon and then the plethora of running backs that KC has, screen passes off of that play action just to kind of ease up the rush. But the way I see this playing out, I'm going to go based off of what I've been seeing, and I think these O lines might struggle versus these D lines being able to tee off. So I'm actually going to disagree with you here. I think this is kind of going to lean towards more of an under kind of grinded out type game. I don't love the 8.5 either. I'd probably lean towards Chiefs over, Chiefs team total over. But yeah, I just I think this might be one of those grinded out type games.
Yeah, I've got it like something like 27-16, 27-17. That's kind of what I think it creeps over the total just a little bit. But you're right. You can make a good case for the under if the pass rush is going to get there. I think it will for Kansas City. Yeah, I think they're going to really harass C.J. Stroud. I'm a little bit more skeptical about the Texans pass rush because of Mahomes always doing such an excellent job getting the ball out.
Yeah.
That's just he's so excellent. He's excellent at doing that. And I think also they're going to have, and you give Andy Reid and the offensive-minded coaching staff that they have this extra time. You know there's going to, and there's always year after year, and I'll get Davis and Trevor's thoughts on this. It feels year after year there's a play or two in Kansas City's offense that they don't even show anybody in the regular season, and they hold it back for the playoffs. You know, I could clearly see some of those plays maybe being inserted into the offense here by the Chiefs. Trev, what do you think here? Houston, Kansas City.
Well, honestly, I think styles make fights, right? As they always say in boxing. I think the same exact thing applies for football. The transitive property does not exist. I think a lot of people are like, well, this team beat this team. That does not exist, right? And when you look at Kansas City, they found ways to win no matter what this season. They're banged up. You know, everybody talked about how lackluster their offense has been, you know, how depleted they've been. But to me, I think the question is this going to be a one-score game? And I don't think it will be. I think Kansas City wins by 2 scores. But also, as to your point with the Will Anderson and the likes of their D-line, Kansas City's very crafty at making defenses play left-handed in terms of what do they do well and how can we combat that. So I'd expect them to run the ball well in like inside zones, some power run scheme, some zone scheme that they have to be able to use perimeter screens, make them chase and run the football. You might even see them use a little tempo, find ways to motion and get Kelsey isolated on the interior, which is what they do a ton of anyway. But Mahomes has just become like just the master of figuring out how to win games. It's not like he's going to go out and throw for 375 and 4 scores like he did, you know, early in his career. He's sort of figure out what do I need to do to win games. And it almost feels like this Kansas City team had the 3 or 4 games in 3 games in 11 days. And almost they told themselves, we have to win these 3 games and we're going to do it decisively and set the tone for the playoffs. And to me, I think they're a dangerous team to bet against. And if you just go by the old strategy, in my opinion, is if I'm picking a playoff game, what quarterback do I trust more? And 80% of the time in the NFL, that's how it ends up sorting out. I'd lean Chiefs here, but I'm not like a huge gambler, right? So, but if I'm a gambler, I would not bet against Mahomes.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's especially as an underdog. We talked about that when you were on with me for the Super Bowl last year, Trevor. They were an underdog. They're almost automatic when they're catching points. They haven't been great laying big points, but this almost feels like Kansas City. It's like they flipped that switch, right? This ain't the regular season anymore. This is the playoffs. I just get worried. You know what also worries me too, and I can't help but go back to last year. And look, this is DeMeco Ryans, a head coach that's a year older, a year better, more experienced. C.J. Stroud, a second-year quarterback, a year better, a year more experienced. But I can't help but think Houston beat the hell out of poor Joe Flacco and the Browns in the wild card game last year in the first game. They went on the road, cold environment, outdoor elements in January in Baltimore, and they got thrashed in that game. What was it, 34-10? They lost to the Ravens in that game, CJ and the Texans last year. So
yeah, if I'm saying a prediction on this game, I think the Chiefs start fast here and really come out and put the hammer on them in the first half. I'd expect Houston would want the ball first for that reason. If they win the toss, I bet you whoever wins the toss is going to want the ball first in this situation.
Yeah. I'll mention a couple props in a bit. I do want to mention this is where the Tank Dell injury could come into a role. Who's going to step up? John Mechie had some drops last week. I'm cheering for the guy. He's Canadian. I don't want to see that shit from him. I wanted him to do well, but I didn't love seeing that. He's going to have to be a big part of this passing game because it can't be Nico all the time. Nico's incredible, Nico Collins, but it can't be him all the time. So that's going to be an interesting factor too. Davis, your thoughts here, Texans and Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm with Trev here. I'm rolling with the Chiefs minus 8.5. And I'm also with Phil. I think the under on 41.5. I think the Texans game plan, honestly, is going to try and keep the ball out of Patty's hands and out of Andy Reid's offense. I think they're going to try and feed Joe Mixon, especially as you mentioned, no Tank Dell, no Stephon Diggs. How much can Nico do against a pretty good Chiefs secondary? I just think you're going to try and take as much pressure off of CJ Stroud as you can. Even last game, I think he struggled with 2 interceptions. And like you mentioned, if he doesn't drop that snap and it turns into a funky rollout and I forgot who he hit for about 30 yards, it might have been a completely different game on that third down. So I think they're going to try and run the ball. And I actually think it'll probably be a closer game to start because the Texans are going to be able to keep the ball out of Patty's hands for a little bit. But then I think CJ Stroud is going to make a mistake or two that'll kind of open this game up.
Interesting, because it's not just Will Anderson, too. They got him back from injury. Foloronzo Fatukasi as well. I thought he played a hell of a game for Houston. And I like their corners, and everyone was raving. Someone actually likes Houston that I know, a well-respected, better colleague of mine, actually likes Houston plus the points. He said, well, didn't you love Ian the way Stingley and Kamari Lassiter, man, is coming on like a freight train as a cornerback, too. His game last week against the Chargers was outstanding. And they said, don't you worry, the corners are playing so well. Can they negate some of these receivers like Brown and others for Kansas City here? I'm like, well, hold on now. Chargers were banged up like crazy at receiver. Quentin Johnston's dropping passes left and right. Will Dissly, the tight end, can't catch a cold last week. And it's unfortunate, let alone a football, because, he's had a great season for the Chargers. Not last week, though. They dropped a shit ton of passes for Herbert. Herbert was not good. He had to play better, but he was let down quite a bit by a lot of his receivers in that game. And so Stingley and Lassiter are great players. I think they're going to face a little bit of a taller order. Just quickly on some props that I'm interested in. Xavier Worthy's been more of a weapon lately, gotten more involved. I'd be interested maybe to look over 50.5 receiving yards for him in this game. I think Mechie, just to get 3 receptions, his receiving, it can't be Nico. With Tank Dell out, someone.
There's no Canadian bias here.
There's no Canadian bias. If he has his hands working properly, Trevor, last week against the Chargers, he's going to get 3 receptions in that football game. So when you look at it, I think there's a good chance he can get to 3 here in this game. Maybe the receiving yards is worth a look. You're going to see a lot of Pacheco too, but I'd go more rushing and receiving with him because he can typically catch the football. I think
they're going to lean into Mahomes. Like this is you get through the regular season. When you get to this point, you lean into your guy, and I agree with you there.
Yeah, no doubt. Should be a great game though. Every game's interesting. Hopefully that one is. This one, the Washington Commanders, they're the upstarts of this NFL divisional playoff weekend, and they're taking on the Detroit Lions. We've got Detroit 9.5-point home favorites, 55.5 the total. Obviously, you've got Dan Campbell and the Lions well rested. I can't say enough about Detroit in that the double-digit number of players on IR on defense down the stretch, and for the defense to hang in and play as well as they did to just make life miserable in that winner-take-all game against Minnesota, finale of the regular season. Now, obviously, it's a blueprint the Rams duplicated in the wild card game, but nevertheless, they made life miserable for Sam Darnold and that Vikings offense with still a bunch of injuries. I know they got Anzalone, was a key linebacker, one of the leaders. And, they got a couple of other players back, but they were still very much shorthanded. To play that well is impressive. Now you give Aaron Glenn, the DC, opportunity here to prepare with the extra time, and certainly Ben Johnson on the other side, on the OC side. And both of these guys are getting interviewed for head coaching jobs, and you can understand why, with the work they've done. The thing that scares me if I'm Washington is my defense here, because we struggle a bit with Tampa Bay. We're ranked in the low 20s, even 30th in some key defensive statistics, especially against the run. And the one thing we have seen from Dan Campbell, while, Jared Goff in the passing game is something you got to be fearful of, he wants to just play bully ball. He just wants to play physical, smash mouth, run the football. And I don't know if Washington's got anything in their arsenal to stop it. This has not been a good run defense. Like I said, they're in the 28th, 29th, 30th ranking in a lot of key metrics, run yards per game allowed, EPA per play on run defense. It's not pretty. And you're going to see a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs. You're going to see, obviously, now a healthy David Montgomery is now available as well.
Does that hurt Detroit?
In terms of Montgomery? being
Yeah.
back because Gibbs is on this heater, right? You're right. Gibbs has been. We saw what
That's
he
like
did against
something that somebody
Minnesota.
brought
He
up to
scored
me.
what, 3
I was like, man,
touchdowns.
David Montgomery's back, and I was like, is that a good thing? Now, David Montgomery's a stud, but Jahmyr Gibbs is a different animal. This guy's different, man.
Yeah, he's got that burst. He's got that open field speed. There's no doubt. And he's more physical than you think. Obviously, they think of Montgomery as the power back, the physical back. Gibbs has physicality, too, with that top-end speed that is able to make things happen in the open field. But to me, that's the matchup that concerns me about Washington because they just haven't been great stopping the run all year. Not to mention they play man coverage, man defense. And, boy, Jared Goff has torched that in the course of his career. And boy, oh boy, I don't think there's a pathway in this game that doesn't involve Detroit scoring points and potentially a lot of points at home here in this game. Now, here's the problem. You want to bet Detroit team total over, it's in the 30s. You think Detroit's going to score on the majority of their possessions. You want to bet over 55.5, but that's a high total. The counter to that, though, is I went back and looked, and a colleague of mine mentioned this to me. Indoor playoff games, the last 20 years, indoor playoff games in the NFL the last 20 years have gone over the total more than 60% of the time, regardless of what the number has been. And obviously, this will be a game free of weather elements. So the number is very difficult because you got to lay 9.5. There's still that element of the back door being open in this game, for a Washington team that their clear strength is on offense. And then you look at the one flaw Detroit's defense has. Mobile quarterbacks have run on them. And Jaden Daniels is obviously someone very gifted and very capable of doing that. They have given up big quarterback run yards the last couple of seasons, Detroit, and you're going to see some of that from Jaden Daniels, especially if everything's covered down the field. Obviously it's a playoff game, so you have that willingness to run more. So that's the concern here. I like Detroit to win the football game. I'll be honest, I'm thinking still it's the day before this game. And I'm still thinking about how I'm going to approach it from a betting standpoint. But I'll tell you this right now. I think Detroit team total, especially maybe a first half look, because we saw them obviously get out to the great start against Minnesota. They've had some great starts at home. I'd be interested in that. Again, the full game team total is 33.5. The concern with asking Detroit to get 34, 35, even though I think they're going to have their way on offense here, guys, it's the fact that it's going to be maybe a run-heavy game from them, time off the clock. Same thing with Washington. They're going to want to limit possessions. That's the problem with asking yourself to take a team total over in the 30s and betting a full game over in the mid-50s, is because are you going to get the number of possessions you're going to need to see that many points in the football game? That's the one question you got to ask yourself here. We'll start with Davis on this one. Davis, what do you think? Saturday night in the Motor City, Washington, Detroit.
Yeah, I'm gonna roll Lions here, 9.5. I'm unsure on the total, but reason why I want to go Lions is basically you look at the Bucks. You got Bucky Irving compared to Jahmyr Gibbs. And Bucky had his way against the Commanders. Jahmyr Gibbs is unbelievable. I'm with Trev. I think David Montgomery actually being back hurts the Lions.
So you think he should at least take a back seat if he does play, but don't get the kind of reps and touches and carries that Jahmyr should get, right?
Totally. I mean, even last year I thought Jahmyr Gibbs as a rookie was so much more dynamic. And I like Dave Montgomery. He's pretty good. But Jahmyr Gibbs he might go 70 on his first touch, Then Mike Evans, what he was able to do. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. I just think they have too much firepower. I think Jared Goff's really good. Ben Johnson does a great job. And I like the Commanders. They have two of the best backers in the game with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. But I think I got to roll Lions here.
Yeah, and of course, this environment is going to be something else there at Ford Field. They played all season. They won Sunday Night Football at the end of the year against Minnesota, so they could get this game and a potential NFC Championship game at Ford Field there. Use it to their advantage. We'll see if they are able to do it. Washington's going to have to score if they're going to stay in this game. I don't envision their defense having a ton of success against Detroit's offense, especially with the extra time to prepare. I think the Lions score at least into the high 20s or 30s. It's a question of can Washington keep pace with them enough to be able to not only cover the number, but give themselves a chance to win. Trevor, where do you stand here, Washington, Detroit?
Yeah, if you think about four sides of the football, both offenses, both defenses, the one you trust the most is probably Detroit's offense of the four. And I think that would probably be a collective thought for most people that watch film or, paid attention. The last 5 games in a row, I believe Detroit has scored over 30 points every game. So 5 games in a row, that means that offense is really humming. They found what they really love to do. The more Jahmyr Gibbs has been involved, the better they've been. I think the X factor in this game could be a Jameson Williams type dude. Where he's just explosive every time he catches the football. And on the other side of the coin, the Commanders, 16 giveaways all year. Not a lot of giveaways. They don't turn the ball over a lot. And now with Detroit, they love to play man coverage. You'd expect the Commanders to have a great scheme, something ready. And 5 of their giveaways were in one game, I believe, against Philly. And so they're not going to turn the ball over a lot. And so if you lean one way, you'd think the over, but you also know Detroit's defense is going to lock down in the red zone, and they're going to get tougher as it goes. But I wouldn't expect, a bunch of defensive touchdowns or creating field positions that way. So it could make you think possibly the under, but the offenses are so darn good. And so the total to me doesn't make a lot of sense to go either way, because it could go either way just based off of a play here, play there. I think if you're going to do anything, I like Detroit with Detroit's offense and Detroit to win the game.
I think one of the things, too, to watch for is what we've seen from the coaches, leading into Phil in just a moment. But Dan Campbell on the Detroit side and Dan Quinn for Washington, they are the kings of fourth down going for it. And I can't wait for one of these fan bases to just lose their shit during the game and say, how the fuck could you go for that there? Kick the damn field goal. Someone's going to get upset on one of these two teams in the course of the game saying, that's not the time to be going for it. What the hell kind of play call was that, or whatever, if they go for it on fourth down and they get stopped. So both of these guys, they roll the dice. They trust their offense, and they probably should, because I think the offenses are the superior unit for both of these teams. But it's going to be interesting to see that. And Washington in particular, you guys, I went back and looked. I can't believe their fourth down conversion rate. It's a historically good fourth down conversion rate this year. Like one all-time stuff.
Who's this, Washington?
Washington. They have basically been riding a magic carpet ride of fourth down conversion success this year. You look at last week too against Tampa Bay in the wild card win. It continued every fourth down. It felt like they converted it, and the drive kept going. Eventually that's got to slow down at some point. Because that's just unsustainable. That your 80s and 90s percentage as far as fourth down conversion rate, but it's been working. Will it work this week, though, is the question. These are two aggressive
losses. Both of them are at home this year.
Yeah.
Something to think about as well. They've only lost at home, which I'm not saying the Commanders win this game, but I think if it gets close, it could, if it's a 3-4 point game down the stretch, I think Washington is more comfortable.
They are comfortable in close games. There is no doubt about that. And you see them pull out the Tampa game, which was close, the doink at the end from Gonzalez with the field goal to win it. And Jaden said it in the post-game interview. Terry McLaurin said it. We're comfortable in these games. We feel if it's close, it's a 3-point game or a 1-score game with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, we're going to find a way to win that damn game. They've said
there you go. Live wager, middle of the third quarter.
and that building's going to get tight. They're going to be tight as a drum if it's a 3-point game, 7-point game with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and Washington's
lots
got
to lose. 15-2, you're the team.
Yep. Yeah, that's something to watch. That's why live betting is advantage. You can take advantage of these situations, and you watch the game unfold, and you could really capitalize based on what your eyes are seeing and what the situation is at that point in time. Bill, what do you think here? Commanders, Lions.
Oh, damn, it's tough to go last. I mean, everyone had a lot of the points I was going to talk about here. But, yeah, I mean, one of the biggest ones for me, with the Washington run defense being, the third worst in the league. Yeah. And, Dan Campbell wanting to, out physical you at the line of scrimmage. I think that's going to cause a major problem for the Commanders if they cannot stop the run game. In terms of what it does to betting here, I mean, I could see the Lions trying to control the ball as well. And I mean, Jaden Daniels, to your guys' point too about, pressure situations, I don't think, he's not going to be phased. So for me, it's going to be how many opportunities does he have? And he needs to capitalize on all of them because he's going to need them given the fact that the Lions are putting up 30, in the last 4 games. So for me, that's a big one. The other thing that you kind of touched on too is the man coverage out of the Lions secondary. and also, they're kind of banged up. They play a lot of man. That could give Jaden Daniels some opportunities there as well to put up some points here. But for the most part, I'm just thinking that in terms of this run game for the Lions, I just see them just being out physicaling the Commanders here. So I think that's kind of where this game's going to go in terms of the total here. I mean, I think that kind of, I like your thought here too with the Lions team total over here. It's going to be, can Jaden Daniels capitalize on the opportunities that he's given? The other thing too is if the Commanders do have a shot at stopping this run somehow, which I don't see happening, then things get a little bit more interesting here. But for the most part, I think the Lions are just going to be the more physical team. They're at home. I'm not sure about this 9.5 spread here. It seems like a lot, but this like we kind of all said here, this game could go a lot of different ways here. But all in all, the Lions win this game. I'm thinking.
Another friend of mine, by the way, because I have the Ice Guys, of course, NHL hockey betting show 7 days a week. And we've had him on the show before, former defenseman with the Detroit Red Wings, Danny DeKaiser. He's now doing Red Wings television. You wouldn't believe they scheduled him to do Red Wings television in the studio for their game Saturday night against Tampa Bay. It's in Tampa. He's back in the studio in Detroit doing this intermission shows and all that shit, post-game, pre-game. He wanted to go to the Lions home playoff game Saturday night. Can't go now because he's got to do Red Wing television. He's pissed. He is absolutely pissed. Brutal. That sucks. I know he's getting paid pretty well to do the television, but man, of all nights to schedule me, we got the Lions home playoff game. It sucks.
The last question is, does Jaden Daniels, does he ever look like a rookie? Like, does that happen at some point?
He's been incredible. He has single-handedly revived a dead franchise.
He's really has. They had the second pick, and they went 12-5 this year.
Yeah.
Like it's like, okay, when's he going to start looking like a rookie? He is not.
Not.
It's been awesome.
It's been awesome to see. Davis, is there anything you wanted to add? It looked like a minute ago you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention even that game. I think when the Commanders had 5 turnovers to the Eagles, I believe Jaden Daniels led them on a game-winning drive, and they scored with like 12 seconds to go or something like that, 8 seconds to go. So even that, in a game where you turn the ball over 5 freaking times to a really good Eagles team, that I do believe Kenny Pickett came in for Jalen Hurts that game, but still really impressive from Jaden Daniels to lead his team down the field and score after 5 turnovers.
Yeah, good memory, Davis, no doubt. That Washington-Philly regular season game, the second one where Washington came back and won, that was when Jalen got hurt, and then Kenny Pickett got hurt, and Tanner McKee, Stanford quarterback years ago, had to finish the game for the Philadelphia Eagles. They were down to QB3 by the end.
They've won 6 in a row now, ever since they lost to Dallas. So it's momentum.
And great segue talking Philly, because we moved to Sunday now, and we've got the LA Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia 6-point home favorites, 43.5 the total. I've been batting leadoff for these first 2 games, so we're going to switch it up here. We'll go to Trevor first, because I've got some interesting thoughts on this game overall. We'll start with you, Trevor, on this one. The first game up on Sunday, Rams Eagles.
So Rams on the season are 10-7. It's easy to look at the records and just think like Philly has been a monster all year. I think Philly has some inner turmoil going on, as everybody's kind of heard in the media. But you look at LA's record; they started 1-4, I believe, and then they lost a meaningless game at the end of the year. Aside from that, they're 11-2 or 10-2. This is a great football team. I think this is maybe my favorite one of the weekend in terms of from a betting standpoint, giving thoughts on it. I lay the points with the Rams, and I think the Rams are going to win this game outright. I think the Rams win this game.
There you go, liking the Rams plus the 6 here in this one against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll go last on this one. We'll go to Phil next. Phil, what do you think here, Rams Eagles?
Yeah, I think Trevor, I agree. I think this is a really interesting game, and I would not be surprised to see the Rams win this one. The big matchup here for me is that Rams defensive line versus just in general the pass protection and the run game, because the first time these 2 teams played earlier in the year, and I think there were some runs that Saquon had where he wasn't.
Saquon went nuts. Went absolutely
crazy.
Crazy.
264 yards. He had a run that was like 70 yards. He didn't get touched. I don't think we see that again. I think this Rams team has come a long way from them and from there. And that Rams D line, man, last weekend versus the Vikings, holy shit.
Say hello to Jared Verse and Braden Fiske. Those dudes can play.
Those guys.
Wow.
I mean, next year I think this Rams D line is probably one of the best in the league, if not already they are. But I think that the key thing is here is shutting down Saquon and forcing Jalen Hurts to win through the air. Because if that's the case, I think the Rams truly do have a shot here. And I just don't. It's just you guys all know it's tough to beat a team twice. And I think that they're going to make the necessary adjustments here. And then the other thing too is, on the other side of the ball, Stafford. I mean, that guy. I mean, he's just incredible, and he knows where pressures are coming. And last weekend, just watching that Vikings game, I was sitting there like, Flores, stop blitzing him. He knows where to go with the ball. He sees his hots and all that stuff. And so, I think that Stafford's going to have a monster game. This guy, he's been in the moments. He's a veteran. So I think that the Rams are going to move the ball. It's just going to be whether or not can that O-line protect them, because that is a key thing here to make sure that Stafford is able to have enough time to get the ball out. But last week, with those pressures, he was able to find his hots and get the ball and spread it around. But if the Eagles can kind of create that organic pressure, not having to blitz a lot of guys, and they're able to kind of keep the ball in front of them, that'll be interesting. But to Trevor's point here, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Rams victory, but I think this goes over as well.
Here's a note for you. This is my stat, the stat of the week for this game. Since the onslaught of points that they played against Buffalo, in the meaningless games or the meaningful games they played, one meaningless game against Seattle, they have not given up double-digit points. The Rams have not. It's all been single-digit points they've given up. Their defense is really playing ball. Yeah. And that's why I kind of lean the Rams in this game, because Stafford's going to take care of the ball. They're going to convert third downs. They're going to put together drives. The only question is, does the weather affect them? And does their defense continue what they're doing? Because if their defense continues playing how they're playing, I think they win this game comfortably, actually.
Yeah, I don't love hearing Jared Verse say I hate Eagles fans to this week. That's shut your damn pie hole, man. Shut up. Just play. You're a great player. You don't have to ruffle anybody's feathers, man. Don't do that shit. Don't do that shit. And by the way, AJ Brown, put the fucking book away. That's totally absurd.
Seriously.
Let's just open up a Roald Dahl novel or something right in the middle of the game. I've never seen anything like that. I don't think Trevor and Davis are ever going to do that shit. Just let's start reading a book in the middle of a playoff game.
He says, I like to read. We'll read the book before the fucking game.
It's like Jonathan Moxon from Varsity Blues.
Yeah,
he's reading the book.
That movie? I remember that. Yeah. So maybe AJ Brown got the idea from watching that movie. So that's just one of the many things that have me thinking that things are a little aloof at times with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. But Davis, what do you think here? LA, Philly.
Yeah, real quick. Did you guys see that book is up like 53,000% on Amazon?
Number one seller. Wow. Number one seller on Amazon.
Maybe he was just trying to promote it. Maybe
I was
he's
going to say, he might have had a deal
promote
with
this book for
somebody.
me, AJ, and you're going to get a cut or some shit.
Yeah, he might
Seriously.
have had a deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, makes me a little nervous that both Phil and Trevor on the Rams, but because I love the Rams so much. I've always been a Matt Stafford lover. Sean McVay, you put those two together and, they put together one heck of a game plan. Another thing, maybe it's just the emotional side, but just everything going on in LA. I was actually able to go to the Vikings-Rams game because it was in Glendale. It was in the Arizona Cardinals Stadium. And it was a pretty cool, crazy atmosphere. I will say there might have been more Viking fans that are there just because the Phoenix, Scottsdale area gets absolutely just snowbirded out by everybody from the Midwest.
Coming from Minnesota, from the cold places. Yeah. Cold cities.
I mean, I saw a ton of Bears fans at the game too. But it was just a crazy atmosphere. I'm interested to see. I feel like they got to get Cooper Kupp involved. I'm curious. I don't know what happened to him. I mean, I know he had the
Tyler Higbee happened to him, I think.
Well, that was going to be my other point. Is Higbee looks really good, right? He looks really comfortable back. Ever since Matt Stafford's been there, Higbee's kind of been his little, safety blanket. Kyron Williams is a stud. And obviously that Rams defensive line, 9 sacks last week. But what I was really impressed with the Rams last week was actually their cornerback play. I thought they did a really good job on some really tough receivers in Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson.
Yep.
Obviously, TJ Hawkinson, he had a pretty good game. But I like the Rams here. I don't know if they're going to win just because of how good Saquon and that O-line is. And I swear Saquon, if he could, every single game, he breaks a 70-yard touchdown. I mean, even the end of the Packers game last week, he could have scored. Obviously, he went down, and they just needed out. I'm going to roll Rams +6 and take the over 43.5.
Is this a bad sign that we're all on the Rams?
Well, that's what made me really nervous.
Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of people I talk to, more than not, you guys, like Philly laying the points, and a lot of people have pointed out the scheduling dynamic. And scheduling dynamics matter, don't get me wrong. This is brutal from a scheduling standpoint for the Rams. Like, with everything going on, too, in L.A. with the wildfires, which is just horrifying to see that, what's going on there with that. The fact that they had to move the game, uproot from L.A., go to Arizona, practice there, play there Monday night, and now fly to Philly for a Sunday game, less than a week, short week as well. Pretty tough scheduling spot. Pretty tough situational spot for LA, and that does concern me. But I'm with the group here. I think there's issues with Philadelphia. I do. I don't think Jalen Hurts is totally all the way back from the concussion either. When you look at the way he played last week, there's going to be elements here which you could say could hurt the Rams because they're an indoor team, a dome stadium. There could be some wind. There's going to be a chance of rain as well, or snow showers depending on the temperature Sunday afternoon in Philadelphia. But the way I see it is that the Rams pass rush, I think could make an impact, especially when you look at the Philly offensive line. You've got to be able to get some kind of rush, and we were able to see that. Now, Matthew Stafford picks apart teams that blitz, and that I knew was going to be an issue for Minnesota last week because Flores is just blitz happy. He just sends pressure, and Stafford picks that apart. Philly won't do that. Vic Fangio will sit back, and he's not going to blitz so much. So can Stafford navigate that? And sometimes the Eagles do a great job with that secondary, goading you into thinking someone's open and they're not. They close quickly, and there's your interception. And Stafford can get into trouble with that sometimes, but he did play a solid game. Can he duplicate that? Can they use Kyron Williams? Again, not easy to run against Philly, but Sean McVay is going to try to stay balanced here in this game. I think what's alarming, you mentioned Davis to get Cooper Kupp involved again. He only had 1 target. That's shocking to me. One measly target against the Vikings last week, whereas Higbee, the tight end, had 5. And then the most, of course, was the great Puka Nacua with 9 targets in that game. So you're right. I don't know if it's they don't think Cooper Kupp is 100% healthy, or if they just feel like, based on the schematic matchup, they feel they've got better edges with Higbee over the middle. And obviously Nakua's kind of displaced Cooper Kupp as the number 1 receiver, and that leaves less opportunities for Cooper Kupp. But I think that's stunning that he only had 1 single target last week in that game against Minnesota.
Yeah, I just don't understand the drop off. There's got to be some sort of, he's banged up a little bit, or
that's what I'm thinking
going on.
Yeah,
I think he did have his 1 target was like a 35-yard fade or like a wheel route type thing.
Yeah, and that was it. That was the only one. That was the only one he had in that game. But yeah, we kind of all like the Rams in some form here, and you guys like the over. I think with the weather issues, I think Philly's going to run heavy. They're slow paced. I think this could be under. But again, you are talking 43.5 here with the Rams and the Eagles. All right, this is the game that, with all due respect to the other 3 games, everyone's hyping up this game more than the rest. People are saying this is a Super Bowl caliber matchup in the divisional round, and it's hard to argue with that. Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, the leading candidates for NFL MVP, head-to-head, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. We've got Buffalo 1-point road favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. Ravens have flipped to the road favorite. Buffalo opened the slight home favorite. Baltimore now favored here on the road in this game. When you look at Baltimore, we'll start with them. Todd Monken gets it finally. We remember Trevor and I were on the Super Bowl show last year talking Chiefs 49ers, and we absolutely crushed Todd Monken for his play calling philosophy against Kansas City, turning Lamar Jackson into a passer. Where did the run game go? Where were the Lamar Jackson quarterback runs against Kansas City? We didn't see them, and they paid the price for it. Against Pittsburgh last week, that's the offense you run with the personnel you have. You've got an offensive line built to run the football. You've got Lamar Jackson, who's a great runner. You've got Derrick Henry now, who is obviously one of the best backs in the NFL, physical. He gets stronger and better as the game goes on. He just wears you out if you're a defensive line on the other side. And they just went run heavy against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which they should be doing. So it's almost like Todd Monken learned from his mistakes last year against Kansas City. And that is definitely something they're going to look to do here against the Buffalo Bills. And if you go back to week 4, you guys, when they played and it was 35-10 Baltimore, the run game absolutely worked. 199 rushing yards for Derrick Henry in that game running the football. Lamar added 54 on the ground, but there was zero ability for them to contain Derrick Henry. The one cat, and so people are telling me, well, it's going to be same old again. Buffalo's not going to be able to stop this. They didn't in week 4. Buffalo is also missing in week 4 Christian Benford, Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, a terrific run coverage linebacker for them who makes a world of difference for this football team. They had a ton of key injuries. Oh, and Taron Johnson as well, who I think is one of their more valuable players on that side of the football. So I think personnel-wise, you at least give them a better chance. Doesn't mean they're going to slow down Derrick Henry because it's difficult as fuck to do that. But I think they've got at least a better chance to be able to do that here in this game against the Baltimore Ravens. I think you counter that with the Buffalo offense versus the Baltimore defense. You know what I like that Joe Brady did last week against Denver? He saw a weakness, and he went after it. He said, our run game can dominate. We don't have to put this game in Josh Allen's hands for the whole game. We can run James Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis, all our backs. Denver's D-line undersized. They talked about that. Good job by Romo on the broadcast last week. He talked about it. Undersized defensive line of Denver. And sorry, Davis, I know you're Bronco. But Buffalo took advantage of that, and they ran James Cook right down their throat most of that game. And the run game could not be stopped, and they picked a weakness, and that was the weakness they saw from the Denver defense, and they picked on it. Now, though, you're going against a Baltimore team that run defense is their specialty. It's very difficult to run on Baltimore. So I think this goes more into Josh Allen's hands, running, Josh Allen throwing, to Kincaid and Knox, the tight ends, to Coleman, Shakir, Cooper, and all those running receivers. So I think it's more of a pass type of game here for Josh Allen, because while Baltimore's defense has made tremendous strides late in the season, the pass defense is still their weaker point. So the secondary is still their weaker point. Outside of Humphrey and Hamilton, we love Humphrey and Hamilton. They're amazing players in that Baltimore secondary. But outside of that, you can make hay against that Baltimore secondary. So that's going to be the critical element too. I'm still in awe of the throw he made to Ty Johnson on that 4th down. That's the game that that's the play that broke Denver's back. They weren't the same after that. That 4th down was just a crusher, and Ty Johnson with a great catch back of the end zone. And then it felt like it was over at that moment, and it was just Denver. You could see it. Their body language and their spirit just wilted after that incredible play by Josh Allen. But I think what I'm getting at is I think the passing props for Allen are back in play, and receiver props, tight end props are back in play here for Buffalo, because they went run heavy last week because they knew it would work. It was the matchup that would work the best against Denver. They won't be able to do that here run-wise against Baltimore this week. I'm going to take Buffalo here. It's difficult. These two teams are capable of winning, but I think we're putting Buffalo now as a slight home dog. Remember, Buffalo went to Detroit, the Lions, and beat the Lions when they were getting healthier. And as much as Lamar is great, Lamar has had a problem in this portion of the postseason. That second playoff win has been a difficult one for him to get. And the only hiccups we've seen from Josh Allen have been when he's faced KC for the most part, and Patrick Mahomes here.
And Joe Burrow.
And Burrow one year, yes. Burrow did get him in Buffalo.
And all the divisional rounds. He's 1-3 in divisional rounds.
1-3. I get
it.
Do
you know the quarterbacks he's beaten in the wild card games?
Yes.
Mason Rudolph, Skylar Thompson, rookie Bo Nix, Indianapolis Phil Rivers, and Mac Jones.
I can already tell someone's against me on this point. Okay. That's okay. We agree to disagree, and we have fun about it. Yeah, I get it. I think Superman Josh Allen, who's put on the cape many a time this year for this team, is going to do it one more time. I think it's going to be a hell of a football game. It's
I
going to
agree.
be exciting as hell. It's going to be cold as hell in Buffalo. Make sure you got like 20 layers of clothing. My goodness, if you're going to go to that football game at Highmark Stadium. But I'm going to go with Buffalo here as the slight home underdog in this game. I think Josh Allen shows why he's had this spectacular. Not that Lamar can't, but I think the difference is going to be just a play here and a play there from the Buffalo offense at the end. And I think they find a way. This one again, this is like Washington, Detroit for me. I want to bet this over. Feels like an over matchup. Feels like both teams can move the football, but it's cold weather. Lamar, too, in the really cold weather. Not that he can't handle it, but like I said, 51.5 is pretty high. Buffalo, we saw limited possessions. Now, it was a run-heavy game plan. If it's going to be more passing, I think the possessions won't be as long as they were and drawn out as they were against Denver last week. So I'm going to end up betting over here in this game despite the cold, but there is concerns that, again, Baltimore run heavy, limited possessions. Buffalo, had some drawn out drives last week as well, but I just think the offenses do enough and we can get a 27, 28-24 type of game here, which would be just enough to get over the total here on Sunday night, even with the cold conditions in play. Davis, start with you on this one. Baltimore, Buffalo.
Yeah. I think Josh Allen's going to have to play perfect in order for Buffalo to win. So I'm going Baltimore. I think Lamar is built for this. I know he has a tough rap because he can't get past, basically every year the Chiefs. But I think this is a completely different unit with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. What's the word on Zay Flowers? Is he in? Is he out? Is it?
Not sure yet. That's critical, Davis. It's a great point. He didn't play last week. They didn't need him against Pittsburgh. You would like to have him, though, against Buffalo. And right now, they're going to probably, we won't know until right before the game. They're going to, draw this out as long as possible because they want him in, but they want to make sure he's 100% before they rule that he's going to play.
Yeah, I think it's just too hard to contain Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson with their speed in the backfield. And I think that Baltimore's defense has improved so much this year, and I think that they're going to be able to shut down sometime. Like even last week, I'm a huge Bronco fan, and I didn't think the Bills looked good at all. I thought the Broncos looked awful, but I didn't think the Bills looked very good at all. Honestly, I didn't even think the Ty Johnson touchdown was a catch because I thought it was still moving around when his ankle.
Come on now, that's just a little orange-colored bias there, I think, in my opinion. Yeah,
I think the ball was still bobbling around.
Just like how you're trying to make it seem like you stayed in bounds last year in Trevor's eyes.
The TV copy says I was in bounds. I don't know. I didn't think the Bills looked that good. I think they still struggle with that. Even with the addition to Amari Cooper, I still think they struggle with that number one receiver. And Khalil Shakir, he's been pretty good. I just still think they're missing some sort of aspect where Josh Allen is going to have to go Superman Josh Allen. And can he do that against a really good Ravens defense? Whereas Lamar can lean on Derrick Henry a little bit. And I'm not saying Josh Allen can't lean on James Cook, but James Cook and Derrick Henry are two different beasts, right? And I would also argue that Lamar is a better runner than Josh Allen. But I would say if player props wise, I would take both quarterback rushing yards over. They're two ultra competitors, I know they both don't care about the MVP, but that's somewhere in the very, very back of their mind. And they're going to do it. Both sides are going to do anything they can to win this football game. And I think you're going to see a lot of QB runs, especially, when the play breaks down.
I'm with you on those props. You know what I like even more with Henry? Rush attempts in this game. Because it seems like even though he gets 100 yards, 147, 138, 186, in a lot of these games, he's gotten into the 20s as far as rush attempts in these games. He had 24 last week against Pittsburgh. And you got to feel like, and I know they were up in that game, but they are not going to abandon a guy that had 199 rushing yards in the regular season meeting against Buffalo. So I like the over. It's 19.5, 20.5 right now. His rushing yards prop in this game, depending on which book you're looking at. I think either number, it's a good bet over 19.5, 20.5 with the Derrick Henry rushing yards prop. And you mentioned, Davis, the quarterbacks running here. I forgot to mention this with the Washington game. It's probably my favorite quarterback rushing yards prop is Jaden in the Washington game over rushing yards because of the fact that, look, Detroit has been vulnerable against mobile quarterbacks. So Jaden Daniels over rushing yards in that Commanders-Lions game definitely makes a lot of sense to me. Philip, what do you think here? That's on paper, it's the game of the weekend here, Baltimore-Buffalo.
Yeah, you mentioned that you could see this kind of turning into the Bills maybe being one-dimensional and needing to throw the ball. Well, the Ravens are second in the league in sacks too, so I think that might present kind of a little bit of an issue for the Bills as well. And to Davis's point, I think that this is the type of game where if the Bills win, Josh needs to be perfect, playing out of his mind here. Where I think the Ravens as a team are just an overall better team. I think that this Bills defense is going to have tough time stopping this run game between Lamar and King Henry here. So those are kind of the two main things I'm looking for here. But for the most part, and it's funny, you look at these two quarterbacks and it's like, Josh Allen has seemed to always show up, even in that, the Chiefs game where, he just didn't have the ball at the end of regulation and then never got a shot in overtime, where Lamar has kind of had those struggles when the moment has come. I think this is his coming out party. I think this is his time to finally get over this next hump. I'm leaving him with the Ravens here -1, and I think it's going to be a King Henry type game, and love that bet too. King Henry over rushing attempts. That's a lock for me.
Looks like, Trevor already hinted, we'll get to Trevor now with this, but it looks like for everybody but yours truly, Ian Cameron, it's going to be the Night of the Raven on Sunday night. That's a 90s dance song, by the way. Magic Affair. Look it up on YouTube just to know what I'm talking about. Trevor, what do you think here, Ravens, Bills?
To your point, Buffalo's 8-0 at home, and those things matter with their record at home and whatnot, but Phil alluded to it as well. The Ravens do a tremendous job at generating sacks and generating pressure. And, they try and blitz teams a lot and navigate those things. But I will say, I think Buffalo early in this game on rundowns leans into James Cook to make Josh Allen feel like he doesn't have to be Superman for 4 quarters.
Right.
I think I don't know what the prop bet is for James Cook for rushing yards, but I think they did a good job moving them defensive line-wise. Early in the season, I just watched the films earlier this week. They did a pretty good job of creating run lanes for James Cook, and I would assume they'll run the ball well on them. And then to go over to the Baltimore side,
50.5 for Cook, 50.5.
I think he goes over that. And then to Baltimore's point, as good of a season as Derrick Henry's had, the reason they brought him here are games like this, because this is where the hump has been for them. Is they get to this point. How can you get past that? How can we get to past this point? And what's the solution was alleviate pressure from Lamar. Let's not make him try and be Superman. So now he's got Derrick Henry back there with him. So he's not going to have to just lean all the way on Lamar to make all the plays. They can feed Derrick Henry early and often. If they're not running the ball well, I think that's where you can expect them to kind of put the ball in Lamar's hands quite often. Now, once they get in the red zone, make no mistake about it, the ball is going to be in Lamar Jackson's hands. But for me, this game is a tough one to pick because Josh Allen is unbelievable. Lamar Jackson is unbelievable. I just think I trust the whole entire team more of Baltimore in this spot.
It's like I said, look, you're betting against a really good team.
No matter what,
win it all in the Super Bowl. Either way in this game, that's what makes it a great game to watch. There's no question. I think the key for Buffalo here is you look at last week, Lamar Jackson with the 15 rush attempts, Derrick Henry, the 26 rush attempts last week against Pittsburgh in that game. 41 combined rush attempts from those two guys, only 21 pass attempts. That's the ratio we're talking about. That's what it should be for Baltimore, because that run game, quarterback run, and Henry combined, that's what they should be doing. It's the strength of their offense. Monken figured it out. The key for Buffalo is get the lead. and maybe even a 2-score lead, and you force Baltimore out of those, shorter, those obvious run situations, have to throw a little bit more and put them in that uncomfortable position. Can they put them in that kind of a spot and deficit? That's obviously the million-dollar question in this game. And that's going to be significant. And that crowd's got to show up too. Because the one thing that the crowd can do to help, and that's why I kind of think if this was in Baltimore, I think Buffalo would really be in tough here in this game. But that's why I think the home field will matter to some degree, because if it gets to 1st and 10 and that crowd's going nuts and there's a couple false start penalties and you're behind the chains and you're 1st and 20 or you're 2nd and 20 all of a sudden, it's a bad place to be for this Baltimore offense. That's where you can get them off the field. That's where you can get them in situations that they are uncomfortable, and that's going to be, I think, something to monitor too. Can that crowd make a difference with the noise factor and put them in positions where they got to commit false start penalties and the like and put them behind the chains? But like I say, this game, this is why, if you're a football fan and you just you're a purist, you love breaking it down like we do here on the show, you love games like this. These are games played with the highest level. Some of the best players in the sport right now play on both of these teams, and it's going to be so much fun to watch here coming up on Sunday night with the Ravens and the Bills, and 2 really good coaching staffs as well. Harbaugh's staff, John Harbaugh's really good, and of course Buffalo, their coaching staff led by McDermott's done a great job as well. Who's also done a great job? Philip Nelson, Davis Alexander, and Trevor Harris right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. They've done a great job breaking down NFL divisional playoff weekend. Great show from all of these guys. We'll try to get them back on either next week for the conference championship. We're definitely getting them on for the Super Bowl. We've talked about that. There's no question when we talk Super Bowl coming up in February. Is there anything you guys want to add before we get your best bet? You got to have a best bet ready, so get ready for that. But Trevor, we'll start with you. Anything you want to add?
Not that I can think of. I don't know what our win total is for the year, but probably take the over.
There you go. I'm sure there's Saskatchewan Roughriders over the win total. So Trevor Harris there. Why not? I'm sure Davis will plug Montreal's win total over now that Trevor has. You just cannot let Trevor one up you like that. You got to respond now.
Oh boy, is that the best bet?
Oh, I was more or less just making a joke. My best bet would be Davis Alexander over passing yards for the year.
Trevor, he's my number 1 fan, huh?
That's right.
Now that the club of pumping tires is officially open, we can move on to other business.
Let's
go
see.
ahead, Davis. Yeah.
I don't really know if I have anything else to add.
Other than hopefully we see some good games this weekend.
Yeah.
Because we didn't see many last weekend.
For some one-score games.
Yeah. Let's see some close games. Let's see some drama here. By the way, and I know Davis loves his baseball. This Sasaki nonsense. If you're a Blue Jay fan and you think they're getting this guy, you're fucking dreaming. You're out to lunch, man. Damn. That's I said. It's down to the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. I said, congrats to the Dodgers on signing Sasaki here.
Everyone from Japan, they all go to LA now. They used to always go to the Yankees. Now, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. So stop wasting your time if you're a Blue Jay fan. You're not getting this guy, just like you didn't get Ohtani last year. Stop the nonsense. Not happening. What dream world are you living in? It's Dodgers get everybody apparently. They've got a endless array of money apparently at this point in time, and they're loading up again, trying to win another World Series. See if we can load up and try to win a best bet or two here, because it's time for best bets here on this edition of the show. Phil, we'll start with you. Best bet for divisional playoff weekend. What do you got?
My best bet will be Derrick Henry on the over rushing attempts. Once you brought that up, I was like, that's for sure going to happen. And you know what? If you want to really get frisky with it, parlay that with the Ravens victory.
Yeah, it's 19.5 actually still. I thought it had gone to 20.5, but I'm seeing 19.5 right now for Derrick. I like that. That's one of my favorite props of the weekend. Honestly. I think he gets 20 carries. I think he had 26 last weekend against Pittsburgh. And even if this is a close game and not the blowout that the Pittsburgh game was, Henry's going to be part of the offense. Whether it's close or a blowout, he's going to be involved. And just based on the heavy skewing we've seen of the run to the pass lately from this Ravens team. So I'm with you. I think he hits 20 rushing attempts. So over 19.5 rush attempts, Derrick Henry for Philip Nelson, his best bet. Trevor, what's your favorite look for the weekend?
Phew.
Not easy, I know.
Rams plus 6.5 or whatever their line is.
Yep. That is, it's 6.5 at a couple spots. Rams plus 6.5 against the Eagles. I get it. Situationals are really bad for the Rams. Short week, travel, lots of emotion, and everything going on back home in Los Angeles with the fires. But boy, oh boy. Sometimes, you know what? People overrate that. Sometimes you're running on fumes. Adrenaline takes over. And you already are playing for the cause of winning the Super Bowl, right? Every player wants it. But now there's another cause. It's for the community there back in Los Angeles. It's amazing how powerful that can be and fuel a team. And I think even though it's tough travel, East Coast, the weather's not going to be great for a dome team. I get all that. I think the adrenaline could take over for the Rams. And I wouldn't be totally shocked if they stun the Eagles either. Davis, how about you? Your best bet?
Yeah, Josh Allen rushing yards over.
That's a good one too. That's a good one. That's a really good one. I didn't mention that, but that's on my prop menu this weekend. High leverage games, and I don't have the exact numbers, but high leverage games as in playoff games, primetime games in the regular season, or games against like 750 win percentage teams or better. It's amazing how the Josh Allen rush numbers just skyrocket up in those games.
Yeah, he's an animal.
Yeah. When it's the Patriots and a meaningless game, he's not going to run it too much. But when you're going to get him in this kind of a situation here, season on the line, I don't think it's much to ask Josh Allen to go, and we'll give this number to Davis with this one, over 44.5. 44.5 is the current number for Josh Allen rush yards on Sunday night. So I do like that prop as well. You know what? Everyone's going with a prop. I'm going to go with a prop, and I'm going to go, it's a player prop best bet segment here this week, because I think sides and totals are a little more tricky. I like the Rams a little bit. I like team totals for the Chiefs and the Lions to a certain degree. I like Bills and the over a little bit. But best bet material, no. I think Jaden Daniels over rush yards for Washington Saturday night. I like that quite a bit. The one glaring issue with Detroit defense under Aaron Glenn is their issues against mobile quarterbacks. And you're going to get quarterback run from Jaden Daniels here quite a bit. I think he can get into the 50s here with his rush yards. So we'll go with Jaden Daniels over 49.5 rushing yards, the best number out there right now with that. I think Jaden Daniels can go over that number. So over 49.5 rush yards here for Jaden Daniels. That's a wrap. There's your divisional playoff show here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. One of the best weekends of the football year. Enjoy the games. Again, Davis and Trevor will be back either next week or for the Super Bowl for sure. Philip as well. Looking forward to these games this weekend. And we hope they're certainly a little bit more compelling and dramatic down the stretch than this weekend was. So shout out to Philip Nelson and my buddies here, Trevor Harris, Davis Alexander as well, for joining us here. Canadian Football League's finest, if you ask me. I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy NFL Divisional Playoff weekend, everybody. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll be back next weekend for Conference Championship Sunday right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.